Brought to you by BioShock The Collection.
Have you ever wondered if Rapture, the underwater city from BioShock, could exist in real life? Well, I can tell you the answer, that yes, for $25 billion, it totally can.
In fact, Japanese construction company Shimizu Corp has conceptual plans for an ocean spiral, an underwater spiraling city that can house up to 5,000 people almost 9 miles under the surface of the ocean.
Hopefully it'll be splicer-free. But for this episode of Reality Check brought to you by BioShock The Collection, I figured that underwater cities had been done, so I started doing some blue sky thinking of my own. BioShock Infinite's Columbia was as much a main character as Booker or Elizabeth, but could this majestic city in the clouds actually exist?
Columbia was built essentially as a way for America to flip off the rest of the world and show everyone just how great its ideals were. Admittedly, this monumentally backfired on them when the citizens of Columbia destroyed Beijing, seceded from the US government, and then floated away to rule itself.
Obviously, Columbia would have had to have been built on the ground and make its way up to the sky somehow.
Well, we know that Booker hitches a ride on a Pilgrim rocket to take him up the 15,000 feet or so needed to reach Columbia. But could a rocket be enough to lift buildings all the way up there? Nerdist science editor Kyle Hill had a crack at the maths. Turns out it's not that easy to find out just how heavy a city is, so he ran his numbers using the weight of the Empire State Building. His reasoning is that if a rocket can hold up a big building like the Empire State, it's plausible to extrapolate those findings to create a skybound city. The rocket in question is the Saturn V. Used by NASA to support the Apollo moon program back in the late 60s and early 70s, it remains the tallest, heaviest, and most powerful rocket in operation, and holds records for the heaviest payload launched, 310,000 pounds.
But is it enough to lift a building?
Given that the Empire State Building weighs 365,000 tons, Kyle calculated that 420 rockets would be needed just to get the building airborne. The first stage of Saturn's liftoff consumes 1.4 million pounds of refined petroleum and 3.178 million pounds of liquid oxygen. For 420 rockets, that's this incredibly long number on your screen right now, pounds worth of chemical weight.
That doesn't sound sustainable or good for the environment. Okay, rockets are out, so how's about Columbia's other flotation device? The balloon! Although, I think we're going to need something a little more heavy-duty.
Helium floats because at sea level its density is 0.2 kilograms per cubic meter, whereas the density of air is 1.2 kilograms per cubic meter. Maths says a cubic meter of helium can lift 1 kilogram of mass. Phil Platt, who writes Slate's Bad Astronomy blog, crunched the numbers on how much helium would be needed to raise the Empire State Building. We know the Empire State weighs 365,000 tons, which works out as 330 million kilograms. Do the math, and that's 330 million cubic meters of helium. Kyle Hill noted that this is the same amount of helium that could power 1,650 Hindenburgs. And Phil worked out that you would need a balloon with the radius of 430 meters to fit it all in. Bearing in mind it's 443 meters from the ground to the very tip of the Empire State Building, so that's a pretty big balloon.
So while technically possible, the best kind of possible, this sounds like another no-go. I'm running out of ideas here, so let's try quantum physics. Don't turn off, it's genuinely quite interesting.
A superconductor is a material with two very important properties. Number one, it displays zero electrical resistance, which means that electricity can flow through it with no loss of current. And number two, a superconductor rejects magnetic fields. So if you place a superconductor on top of a very strong magnetic track, one of two things will happen. If it's a type 1 superconductor, it rejects magnetic fields completely. But if you have a type 2 superconductor, that has many small defects which allow some of the magnetic field to slip through. However, once the magnetic field goes through the superconductor, it can't get out. The superconductor then gets locked in place above the magnetic track, which is a phenomenon known as quantum locking. But crucially, the superconductor will only behave this way once it's cooled past a critical temperature, a pretty chilly minus 196 degrees C. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm already foreseeing problems with making a city float this way. For starters, the land would have to be covered in super strong magnets, and the city itself would have to be constantly cooled by liquid nitrogen, making it completely unlivable.
What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age!
It might be for the best that we don't live among the clouds.
We know from the game that Columbia is around 15,000 feet in the air, which is classified as very high altitude by medical experts. Now, we humans are a pretty squishy species. We're not really made for high altitudes. Exposure can lead to altitude sickness or even the potentially fatal high altitude cerebral edema.
Also, it'd be cold as Seeing as I don't think we're going to be living in the clouds anytime soon, it's a good job we've still got the nice, cold, hard, safe ground, huh? Anyway, hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Reality Check. Don't forget, I'm on Twitter at LucyJamesGames. For more videos like this one, would you kindly like and subscribe to GameSpot? See you next time.